On a windswept winter evening, Elliot Grayson, a real estate tycoon hardened by wealth and regret, stands at his ex-wife's grave, haunted by the memory of banishing her 4 years ago, accusing her of infidelity. But when a 4-year-old black boy, Noah, clutching a daisy and cradling a white toddler, Jamie calls him Daddy, his world fractures. Who are these children? What secrets did Clara bury? Drop a comment. Where are you watching from, and when? Subscribe to unravel this tale of betrayal and redemption. What's your guess for this heart-wrenching mystery? Stay until the end for a twist that'll steal your breath. The wind howled through Mount Auburn Cemetery, clawing at Elliot Grayson's cashmere coat as he stood before Clara's gravestone. The marble gleamed under a bruised sky, its inscription, Clara Marie Ellis, beloved daughter, a quiet accusation. 4 years ago, he'd cast her out, his voice like steel, accusing her of betrayal. Sterile, the doctors had sworn. Now, with her gone, taken by a car crash he'd read about in a fleeting obituary, he'd come to whisper apologies to the dead. His breath clouded in the frigid air, each exhale heavy with regret he'd never voiced in life. A small voice sliced through the silence. "Daddy?" Elliot's heart lurched. He turned, eyes locking on a 4-year-old boy, skin dark as cedar, standing 10 paces away. The child clutched a wilted daisy, his brown eyes wide and certain, cradling a white toddler in his thin arms. The younger boy, no more than 2, with pale curls and flushed cheeks, clung to the older one, babbling, "Mama." Elliot froze, the word daddy echoing like a gunshot in his skull. A black boy calling him father, holding a white child? Impossible. "Who are you?" Elliot's voice cracked, sharper than he meant. He stepped forward, boots crunching on frostbitten grass. The older boy didn't flinch, his gaze steady, almost unnervingly familiar. "I'm Noah," he said, his voice small but clear. "This is Jamie." He adjusted the toddler, who squirmed and muttered, "Mama?" again, tugging at Noah's tattered jacket. Elliot's chest tightened. Noah's eyes, though brown, held a spark that pricked at buried memories. Clara's eyes, perhaps, or something else he couldn't place. "Why'd you call me that?" Elliot knelt, bringing himself to Noah's level, his pulse hammering. His piercing blue eyes, a Grayson hallmark, searched the boy's face for answers. Noah tilted his head, the daisy trembling in his grip. "Mommy said Daddy has blue eyes like you. She said you'd come." Elliot's breath hitched. Clara had spoken of him, to this child. His gaze fell to the scarf draped over Noah's shoulder, a faded blue knit, frayed at the edges. He knew it instantly. Clara's scarf, the one she'd worn on their first date, her laughter echoing under Boston's streetlights. The sight of it, wrapped around this boy, was a punch to his gut. "Clara, your mother?" Elliot's voice was barely a whisper, the name tasting of ash. Noah nodded, his small hand tightening around Jamie's waist. The toddler, oblivious, chewed on his sleeve, murmuring, "Mama," like a prayer. Elliot's mind raced, piecing together fragments. Clara had died 3 months ago, the obituary said, alongside her partner in a car crash. Had she woven a lie telling this boy Elliot was his father? And Jamie, who was he to her? The questions churned, each one a shard of glass in his thoughts. Before he could speak, a woman's voice cut through the wind. "Noah, Jamie, come here." Elliot rose, turning to see an older woman approaching, her face etched with grief and resolve. Her gray hair was pulled tight, her coat worn but dignified. She reached for the boys, her hands gentle but firm. Noah hesitated, glancing at Elliot, while Jamie leaned into her, cooing softly. "Who are you?" Elliot asked, his tone edging toward demand. "Grace Ellis," she said, her voice steady but laced with steel. "Clara's mother, their grandmother." She gestured to Noah and Jamie, her eyes narrowing as they met Elliot's. "And you're the man who broke my daughter's heart." The words landed like a slap, raw and unyielding. Elliot flinched, his guilt rising like bile. "Clara raised them in Chicago," Grace continued, her gaze unwavering. "She and her partner died 3 months ago. A truck lost control. She told Noah about you, though I begged her not to." Elliot's throat burned. "Why would she say I'm his father?" He pointed to Noah, his voice trembling with doubt. And this boy, Jamie? Who's he? Grace's lips pressed into a thin line, her silence heavy with judgment. Noah's your son, or so Clara believed. Jamie is her son with the man who loved her after you threw her away. Her words were a blade slicing through his defenses. Elliot staggered, the ground unsteady beneath him. His son? A black child? The doctors had been certain, yet Noah's scarf, Clara's scarf, clung to him like proof of something he couldn't grasp. I don't understand, Elliot said, his voice raw. She never told me. Grace's eyes softened, but only slightly. You didn't give her a chance, did you? She lifted Jamie into her arms, the toddler nestling against her. Noah stayed close, his small hand clutching her coat, but his gaze lingered on Elliot, curious and unafraid. What do you want with them now? Grace asked, her tone a challenge. Elliot opened his mouth, but no words came. He wanted answers, truth, absolution, but all he felt was the weight of 4 lost years. I need to know, he said finally, his voice breaking. I need to talk to you again. Grace studied him, her expression unreadable. You know where to find me, she said, then turned, guiding Noah and Jamie away. Noah looked back, his daisy still in hand, and Elliot felt a pang he couldn't name. As their figures faded into the dusk, Elliot stood alone, the wind biting deeper. Clara's scarf haunted him, a thread tying him to a past he'd shattered. Noah's voice, Daddy, rang in his ears, and Jamie's murmurs echoed like a plea. What had Clara hidden? What had he destroyed? He touched the gravestone, its cold marble unyielding. Clara, he whispered, what did you leave behind? The cemetery offered no answers, only the promise of truths he wasn't ready to face. The fire in the study of Grayson Manor snapped and hissed, its warm glow mocking the chill between Elliot Grayson and Clara. 4 years ago, the room, lined with mahogany and leather-bound books, had been their sanctuary. Now it was a battlefield. Elliot gripped a bourbon glass, its amber contents trembling as he stared at Clara, who stood by the window, snow swirling beyond the pane. Her hands, pale and delicate, cradled her stomach, a gesture that sparked a fury he couldn't contain. You're pregnant, he said, voice low, each word a shard of ice. And you expect me to believe it's mine? Clara's green eyes, usually alight with warmth, shimmered with unshed tears. Elliot, it's ours, she said, her voice steady despite the tremor in her frame. I've never been with anyone else. You know that. Her plea hung in the air, fragile as the snowflakes outside. But Elliot's heart was a fortress, fortified by years of boardroom battles and a mother's warnings about gold diggers. The doctor's verdict echoed in his mind. Sterile. A sports injury from college. Irreversible. He'd accepted it, buried the grief. Now Clara's words felt like a betrayal, a crack in the life he'd built. He laughed, a sound sharp enough to cut. Ours, Clara, I've seen the best specialists in New England. They don't make mistakes. He set the glass down, the clinking against the desk like a gavel. So tell me, whose child is it? Her face paled, but she didn't look away, her chin lifting with a defiance he hadn't seen before. It's yours, she repeated, softer now, as if willing him to hear the truth beneath her words. I don't know how, but it's a miracle. Our miracle. Miracle? Elliot surged to his feet, towering over her slender form. My mother was right about you. She said you'd play me, aim for the fortune. His voice dropped, venomous. I should have listened. Clara's eyes flashed, a spark of anger breaking through her hurt. Your mother never gave me a chance, Elliot, just like you're not giving our child one. The grandfather clock ticked mercilessly, each second stretching the silence into a chasm. Outside, the snow fell thicker, cloaking Boston in a deceptive calm. Elliot crossed to the safe behind a framed Monet, his fingers spinning the dial with practiced precision. He extracted a checkbook, the pen's scratch loud in the quiet as he wrote with force, nearly tearing the paper. 50,000, he said, thrusting the check toward her. Take it and disappear. Consider it payment for your services. Clara's gaze didn't waver from his, ignoring the paper trembling in his hand. You think you can buy me off? She whispered, her voice breaking. Pay me to vanish with your child? Not my child, he corrected, his tone colder than the storm outside. And yes, that's exactly what I expect. Be gone by morning. Clara's shoulders stiffened, her dignity a shield against his cruelty. She stepped closer, her scent, lavender and warmth, stirring memories he shoved aside. If I leave, she said, it's not because of your money. It's because you've already lost me. She turned, her footsteps soft but resolute, pausing at the door. If you ever change your mind, don't come looking. You won't find us. The door closed with a quiet click, a finality that echoed louder than any shout. Elliot poured another bourbon, the burn in his throat a poor substitute for the hollow ache in his chest. He told himself it was anger, righteous and justified. Clara had lied, betrayed him. The check lay untouched on the desk, a testament to her defiance. He sank into his chair, staring at the fire, its flames blurring as doubt crept in. What if she was telling the truth? He banished the thought, drowning it in liquor, convincing himself he'd done what was necessary. By dawn, Clara was gone, her closet half empty, her presence erased from the mansion. The torn check lay in the wastebasket, its pieces a silent rebuke. Elliot threw himself into work, building skyscrapers to bury the memory of her laughter, her touch. He never searched for her, never questioned the doctors again. In his mind, the chapter was closed, the pages burned. Yet as the fire in the study dwindled that night, a flicker of uncertainty lingered, a whisper he couldn't silence. The memory dissolved, leaving Elliot in his penthouse office, the Boston skyline glittering beyond the window. 4 years had passed, but Clara's voice still haunted him, her words at the door now intertwined with Noah's. Daddy. The scarf, her scarf, wrapped around that boy's shoulders, was a thread pulling him back to that night. And Jamie, the toddler Noah held so protectively, who was he in Clara's story? Grace's accusation rang in his ears. You broke my daughter's heart. Had he broken more than that? Elliot's fingers tightened around the photo of Noah and Jamie, sent by the investigator he'd hired. The boys' faces, one dark, one pale, stared back, their innocence a mirror to his guilt. He demanded answers, but each clue, Clara's death, Noah's claim, Jamie's existence, only deepened the mystery. What had Clara built in Chicago? Why had she named him as Noah's father? He rose, pacing, the city lights offering no solace. The truth was out there, in Grace's guarded words, in Noah's unwavering gaze. He had to face it, no matter how much it hurt. The cemetery's dusk deepened, shadows stretching long across the frost-bitten grass as Elliot Grayson lingered by Clara's grave. Noah's voice, Daddy, still echoed, a tether pulling him back from the memory of that bitter night 4 years ago. The faded blue scarf around the boy's shoulders, Clara's scarf, was a ghost of their past, its frayed edges whispering of love he'd discarded. Noah, clutching a wilted daisy and cradling little Jamie, had looked at him with such certainty, while Grace's words, you broke my daughter's heart, cut deeper than the winter wind. He needed answers, and they lay with the woman and children now walking away. Elliot caught up to them, his breath clouding in the chill. Wait, he called, voice rough with urgency. Grace paused, her gray coat blending into the twilight. Jamie nestled against her shoulder. Noah turned, his brown eyes wide, the toddler's pale curls brushing his cheek as he held Jamie's hand. What do you want, Mr. Grayson? Grace asked, her tone guarded, each word a wall between them. Her eyes, so like Clara's, held a grief that made Elliot's chest ache. I need to understand, Elliot said, stepping closer, his gaze flickering to Noah. Why did Clara tell him I'm his father? He gestured to the boy, whose small fingers tightened around the daisy. Jamie babbled, Mama, tugging at Noah's sleeve, oblivious to the tension. Elliot's throat burned. The toddler's word, so innocent, felt like a plea from Clara herself. And him, Elliot added, nodding at Jamie. Who is he to her? Grace's lips pressed into a thin line, her silence heavy with judgment. She adjusted Jamie, the boy's tiny hand clutching her coat. You don't get to demand answers after what you did, she said, voice low but sharp. Clara raised these boys alone in Chicago. She and her partner died 3 months ago in a car crash. That's all you need to know for now. Her words landed like stones, each one a reminder of his absence, his failure. Elliot's hands clenched, the cold seeping through his gloves. She said I'm his father, he pressed, pointing to Noah, his voice trembling with doubt. Why would she do that? I was told I couldn't. He stopped, the words sterile, too raw to speak. Noah tilted his head, studying him, and Elliot felt exposed, as if the boy saw through his armor. Mommy said Daddy likes trains, Noah said suddenly, his voice small but clear. Do you like trains? The question, so guileless, pierced Elliot's defenses, stirring a memory of Clara teasing him about his childhood train set. He knelt, meeting Noah's gaze, his heart pounding. I used to, he said, voice softer now. Did your mommy tell you that? Noah nodded, the scarf slipping slightly, revealing a patch of Clara's knitting, a lopsided stitch he'd once laughed about. Elliot's breath caught, the fabric a bridge to a life he'd shattered. Jamie, restless in Grace's arms, reached out, babbling, "Da!" his tiny fingers brushing Elliot's coat. The gesture, so trusting, sent a jolt through him, a warmth he didn't deserve. Grace watched, her expression softening, but only a fraction. Clara wanted Noah to know you, she said, her voice quieter now. She told him stories, your blue eyes, your love for trains. I told her it was a mistake, but she believed you'd come one day. Her words were a knife, twisting with the weight of Clara's faith in him, a faith he'd betrayed. Jamie's her son with the man who loved her after you, she added, her gaze unwavering. A good man, gone too soon. Elliot stood, his legs unsteady, the truth slipping through his grasp like snow. I didn't know, he said, voice breaking. She never told me. Grace's eyes hardened. You didn't give her a chance, did you? You threw her out, pregnant and alone. The accusation hung between them, raw and unyielding. Noah stepped closer to Grace, sensing the tension, his small hand gripping her coat. Jamie murmured, Mama, again, his voice a soft echo of loss. I need to know more, Elliot said, desperation creeping into his tone. Please, Grace, I'm not here to hurt them. He looked at Noah, whose steady gaze held no fear, only curiosity, and at Jamie, whose innocence mirrored Clara's kindness. Grace studied him, her silence stretching like the shadows around them. You want the truth? She said finally. Come to my house, but don't expect it to be easy. She gave him an address in Cambridge, her voice firm. Tomorrow. Don't make me regret this. Elliot nodded, his throat too tight for words. Grace turned, guiding Noah and Jamie toward the cemetery gate. Noah glanced back, the daisy still in his hand, his scarf trailing like a lifeline. Elliot watched them go, the wind biting deeper, carrying the faint sound of Jamie's babbling. He touched Clara's gravestone, its marble cold against his fingers. What did you see in me, Clara? He whispered, the question lost to the dusk. He walked to his car, the photo of Noah and Jamie burning in his pocket, sent by the investigator he'd hired. Clara's scarf haunted him, a relic of love he'd dismissed. Noah's words, Mommy said Daddy likes trains, mingled with Grace's accusation, each a thread in a tapestry he couldn't yet read. Jamie's presence, a child not his but Clara's, added another layer to the mystery. What life had she built in Chicago? Why had she kept Noah's existence a secret? The answers lay with Grace, in a small house in Cambridge, and Elliot knew he couldn't turn back now, no matter how much the truth might break him. Elliot Grayson's penthouse office loomed high above Boston, its glass walls framing a skyline that glittered like a taunt. The photo of Noah and Jamie, sent by the private investigator, lay on his desk, their faces, Noah's steady gaze, Jamie's innocent smile, burning into him. Grace's parting words at the cemetery echoed, Come to my house. Don't expect it to be easy. Noah's scarf, Clara's scarf, clung to his memory, a relic of love he'd shattered 4 years ago. Now with Clara gone and 2 children tied to her legacy, Elliot paced, the city's pulse unable to drown out his own. He'd hired the investigator the moment he left Mount Auburn, desperation driving him to unravel the truth about Noah's claim and Jamie's place in Clara's life. The mahogany desk, usually a throne for signing multi-million-dollar deals, felt like a prison as he waited for answers. His phone buzzed and he snatched it, the investigator's gruff voice cutting through. "Got something for you, Grayson? Are you sitting down?" Elliot's grip tightened, his pulse a drumbeat. "Just tell me," he said, voice rough with anticipation. The investigator's report was clinical, each detail a blow. Clara had fled to Chicago after Elliot's betrayal, settling in a cramped tenement in Englewood. She worked as a librarian, her days spent reading to children, her nights stitching clothes for Noah. Then Jamie. Her partner, a social worker named Daniel, had been a quiet man, kind, devoted. They'd met 2 years after she left Boston, their love blooming in shared struggles. Noah was hers from the start. Jamie born to her and Daniel. 3 months ago, a truck veered into their car on a rainy highway, killing them both. No other men in her life, the investigator said. No trace of infidelity. She lived for those boys. Elliot sank into his chair, the words landing like ash. Clara alone raising Noah, his son, and Jamie, the child of a man who'd given her what he couldn't. The investigator's voice faded, replaced by the memory of Noah's question. "Do you like trains?" And Jamie's babbled, "Da." He stared at the photo, Noah's dark skin a puzzle. Jamie's pale curls a reminder of Clara's resilience. Had she lied about Noah's paternity, or had he been the liar, blinded by pride? The doctor's diagnosis, sterile, felt like a chain, but Grace's accusation, "You didn't give her a chance," was heavier. A knock broke his reverie. Marcus, his oldest friend and lawyer, strode in, his sharp suit at odds with his blunt demeanor. "You look like hell," Marcus said, leaning against the desk. "What's this about kids at a cemetery?" Elliot slid the photo toward him, voice low. "Clara's boys. Noah says I'm his father. Jamie's. Someone else's." Marcus raised an eyebrow, scanning the image. "And you believe it? After you threw her out?" His words, though gentle, stung, echoing Grace's judgment. "I don't know what to believe," Elliot admitted, rubbing his temples. "She never told me about Noah. Why would she after what I did?" He recounted Grace's words, Noah's scarf, and Jamie's murmurs. Marcus listened, his silence thoughtful. "You're digging into Clara's life like it's a deal to close," he said finally. "But this isn't a contract, Elliot. It's a family. What if Noah's yours? What then?" Elliot's jaw tightened, the question a mirror to his fear. "I hired an investigator," he said, dodging. "I need facts." Marcus sighed, crossing his arms. "Facts won't erase 4 years of absence. You broke Clara. If Noah's your kid, you broke him too." The truth in his words was a blade, slicing through Elliot's defenses. He rose, pacing to the window, the city's lights blurring. "She lived in a tenement," he said, voice hollow. "Worked herself to the bone for those boys. I gave her a check, Marcus. 50,000. She tore it up." The memory of Clara's defiance, her eyes blazing as she left, twisted in his gut. "So what's your play?" Marcus asked, his tone softer now. "You gonna run from this, like you did with her?" Elliot's hands clenched, the photo's edge crumpling in his pocket. "I'm going to Grace's tomorrow," he said, voice firm despite the tremor. "I need to know why Clara told Noah I'm his father. And Jamie, what's his story?" Marcus nodded, but his eyes held doubt. "Be careful, man. You're not just chasing truth. You're chasing ghosts." The investigator's final words rang in Elliot's ears. She lived for those boys. Clara's life in Chicago, pieced together from records and neighbors' accounts, was a tapestry of sacrifice. She'd sung lullabies to Noah, taught Jamie his first words. Daniel had been her anchor, not a replacement for Elliot, but a new beginning. The crash had stolen them, leaving Noah and Jamie to Grace, who'd taken them in without hesitation. Elliot's throat burned, imagining Clara's laughter, her hands guiding her son's. Had she thought of him, even once? He pulled the photo from his pocket, Noah's steady gaze meeting his, Jamie's smile a flicker of Clara's joy. The scarf, the trains, the stories she'd told Noah. Each was a thread tying him to a life he'd rejected. Grace's address lay on his desk, a summons he couldn't ignore. Tomorrow he'd face her, demand answers, but the fear gnawed. What if Noah was his? What if Clara had been true? The city skyline offered no comfort. its towers a testament to his empire, empty without her. Elliot sank back into his chair, the photo trembling in his hands. Clara's voice, soft and broken from that night, whispered in his mind, "You won't find us." But he had found them, or they'd found him, in a cemetery's chill. Noah's daddy and Jamie's mama were calls he couldn't silence. The truth waited in Cambridge, in Grace's guarded eyes, in the boy's innocence. He closed his eyes, the rain tapping against the glass like fingers, urging him forward. "Clara," he murmured, "what did you leave for me to find?" The morning sun filtered weakly through Grace Ellis's modest Cambridge home, casting soft shadows across a living room cluttered with toys and memories. Elliot Grayson stood at the threshold, a box of pastries in hand, his heart pounding as he faced the woman who held the key to Clara's secrets. Noah's voice, Daddy, and Jamie's babbled "da" lingered from the cemetery, intertwined with the investigator's report. Clara's life of sacrifice in Chicago, her love for two boys, her death beside a man who cherished her. Grace's address had burned in his pocket all night, a summons to truce he both craved and feared. Grace opened the door, her gray eyes wary but not unkind. "You're early," she said, stepping aside. Inside, Noah sat on the floor, sketching a train with crayons, while Jamie stacked wooden blocks, giggling as they toppled. The warmth of their play clashed with the ache in Elliot's chest, a reminder of the family he'd shattered 4 years ago. "Sit," Grace said, nodding to a worn couch. She settled Jamie on her lap, the toddler clutching a block, and called softly, "Noah, go play in your room for a bit." Noah glanced at Elliot, his gaze curious, then obeyed, tugging Jamie along. The door clicked shut, leaving a heavy silence. Elliot set the pastries down, his hands unsteady. "I need to know why Clara told Noah I'm his father," he said, voice low, the question a wound laid bare. "And Jamie, how does he fit into this?" Grace studied him, her face etched with grief and resolve, as if weighing whether he deserved the truth. "You don't waste time," she said, her tone sharp but tempered. "But you don't get to barge in and demand Clara's life like it's a ledger to balance." He leaned forward, desperation creeping into his voice. "I'm not here to hurt them, Grace. I need to understand. Clara never told me about Noah. Why?" The name felt fragile on his tongue, conjuring the faded scarf, the daisy in Noah's hand. Grace's lips tightened, her fingers tracing Jamie's curls. "When Noah was born," she began, voice steady but heavy, "his skin surprised Clara. She didn't know her great-grandmother was black. My mother buried that truth, ashamed of the hate she'd faced in her time. Clara only learned it in Chicago when I told her our family's history." Elliot's breath caught, the revelation a jolt. "Black ancestry," he repeated, the words foreign, stirring unease he couldn't name. Grace nodded, her gaze unflinching. Clara was proud, once she knew. She saw Noah as a gift, a bridge to roots we'd lost. But she didn't tell you because you'd already broken her. Her voice hardened, each word a blade. "You accused her of betrayal, threw her out when she was carrying your son. She rebuilt her life without you, for Noah's sake." The room seemed to shrink, Grace's words pressing against Elliot's chest. He saw Clara in his mind, her green eyes blazing as she tore his check, her dignity unyielding. "I didn't know," he said, voice cracking. "The doctors said I was sterile." Grace's expression softened, but only slightly. "And you believed them over her," she said. "Clara loved you, Elliot. When you cast her out, it wasn't just her heart you broke. It was her trust." He swallowed, the truth a bitter pill. "And Jamie?" he asked, glancing at the door where the boys played. Grace's face warmed, a flicker of tenderness breaking through. "Jamie's her son with Daniel, the man who gave her hope after you, a social worker. Kind, steady. They met in Chicago, built a family with Noah and Jamie. Clara loved them both as her own. No difference between them." Her voice faltered, grief surfacing. "They died together in that crash. A truck on a wet road. She was taking the boys to the zoo." Elliot's throat burned, imagining Clara's laughter in a car, Noah's chatter, Jamie's giggles, all silenced in an instant. "Why didn't she reach out?" he asked, voice barely a whisper. "If Noah were mine, why keep it from me?" Grace's eyes met his, fierce with conviction. Because she wanted Noah to have a father who believed in him, not one who doubted his very existence? You gave her no reason to trust you'd change. The words landed like a fist, raw and unsparing. Elliot's hands clenched, the guilt he'd buried surging back. Noah's scarf, Jamie's trust in his brother. They were Clara's legacy, a world she'd built without him. I want a DNA test, he said suddenly, the words spilling out, a desperate grasp for certainty. For Noah, I need to know for sure. Grace's breath hitched, her gaze turned cold. You still don't trust her, she said, voice low, but I'll allow it for Noah's sake, not yours. She rose, her movements brisk, signaling the end to their talk. It'll take time, she said. And if he's yours, what then? Will you step up or run again? Elliot didn't answer, his mind a storm of doubt and shame. Grace opened the door to the boys' room, where Noah peeked out, holding Jamie's hand. Say bye, Grace said softly. Noah waved, his crayon-stained fingers bright. Bye, Mr. Eyes, he said, grinning. Jamie echoed, Da! His giggle a spark in the gloom. Elliot stood, his heart twisting at their innocence. I'll be back, he said, meeting Grace's gaze. She nodded, but her eyes held a challenge. Prove it. He left, the sound of Noah's laughter fading behind him. Outside, snow dusted his coat, the cold a mirror to the questions churning within. Clara's ancestry, Noah's birth, Jamie's place. It was a tapestry of truths he couldn't unravel alone. The DNA test was his next step, but Grace's words haunted him. You broke her trust. Had he broken Noah too? He climbed into his car, the photo of the boys tucked against his chest. Clara's face flashed in his mind, her voice from that night 4 years ago. You won't find us. But he had, and now the truth was closer, waiting in Noah's blood, in the life Clara had forged. He gripped the wheel, resolve hardening. Tomorrow he'd arrange the test, but deep down he feared not the result, but what it would demand of him, a man who'd lost everything and might yet lose more. Rain lashed against the floor-to-ceiling windows of Elliot Grayson's penthouse office, each drop a rebuke as he sat alone, the unopened envelope on his desk a ticking bomb. 2 weeks had passed since Grace's words in her Cambridge home, "You broke her trust," had unraveled him, her revelation of Clara's black ancestry and Noah's birth still burning in his mind. The DNA test he'd demanded, a last grasp at certainty, had arrived, its results sealed in crisp white paper. Noah's face, earnest and trusting, haunted him, as did Jamie's giggles, a toddler bound to Clara's heart, but not his own. Elliot's fingers hovered over the envelope, fear and guilt warring within. He'd spent the intervening days in a haze, the investigator's report replaying, Clara's life in Chicago, her love for Noah and Jamie, her death beside Daniel in that crash. Grace's challenge, if he's yours, what then? Echoed, a gauntlet he wasn't ready to pick up. The photo of the boys, Noah's crayon-stained hands and Jamie's pale curls, lay beside the envelope, their innocence a mirror to his failures. 4 years ago, he'd driven Clara away, her torn check a symbol of her defiance. Now the truth about Noah waited, and with it, the weight of a life he'd refused. Elliot's hand trembled as he slit the envelope, the paper rustling like a whisper of judgment. The words leaped out, probability of paternity, 99.9%. Noah was his son. The room spun, the city's skyline blurring beyond the rain-streaked glass. His breath came in shallow gasps, the certainty he'd sought now a blade in his chest. The doctors had been wrong, a rare misdiagnosis, a fluke that had cost him everything. Clara hadn't lied. Her voice, soft and broken that night, rang in his ears. It's yours, Elliot. He'd called her a liar, banished her, and now she was gone, leaving their son behind. He sank back, memories flooding like the rain outside. Clara was in their kitchen, sunlight in her hair, humming as she baked. Her laughter when he tripped over her scarf, that faded blue knit now wrapped around Noah. Their dreams of a family, whispered in the dark, were crushed by his sterile diagnosis. He saw her standing by the window, hands on her stomach, pleading for trust he wouldn't give. The check, the safe, his cold dismissal. Each moment a brick in the wall he'd built between them. Tears stung his eyes, the first in years, as he realized he'd broken not just Clara, but Noah, a boy who called him daddy with unwavering faith, and Jamie. Elliot's gaze drifted to the photo, the toddler's smile a spark of Clara's resilience. Not his son, but hers, born to Daniel, the man who'd loved her when Elliot failed. Grace's words resurfaced. Clara loved them both as her own. Jamie, with his babbled daw and trusting reach, was Clara's choice, her strength after betrayal. The image of Noah cradling Jamie at the cemetery, protective and tender, tightened Elliot's throat. They were brothers in Clara's heart, bound by her love, not blood. Could he honor that, or would he fail them too? The phone rang, jarring him. Marcus's name flashed on the screen. Elliot answered, his voice hoarse. "It's done," he said, the words heavy. "Noah's mine." Marcus's pause was brief, his tone gentle but firm. "I'm sorry, man, and glad for you. What's next?" Elliot stared at the results, the numbers a verdict. "I don't know," he admitted. "Grace was right. I didn't trust her. I destroyed everything." Marcus's voice softened. "You can't change that, but you can choose now. Noah's your son. Jamie's part of Clara's story. What kind of man do you want to be for them?" Elliot closed his eyes, Marcus's question a mirror to Grace's challenge. He saw Noah's daisy, Jamie's pebble, and the scarf tying them to Clara. "I need to see them," he said, resolve hardening. "Tomorrow I'll go to Grace's." Marcus exhaled, relief evident. "Good, but go slow, Elliot. Those kids don't need a tycoon. They need a father. And Grace? She's protecting them. Earn her trust." Elliot nodded, though Marcus couldn't see. "I will," he said, the promise fragile but real. Hanging up, Elliot stood, the rain a steady drumbeat against the glass. He clutched the photo, Noah's gaze steady, Jamie's smile bright. Clara's life in Chicago, her songs for Noah, her stories for Jamie, was a world he'd never known. She'd built a family without him, yet named him in Noah's heart. Why? The question gnawed, but Grace's voice answered. She believed you'd come one day. The faith he'd betrayed now demanded he act, not for absolution, but for the boys Clara had loved. He crossed to the window, Boston's towers gleaming through the storm. The DNA results lay on the desk, a truth he couldn't deny. Noah was his son, a living piece of Clara, of him. Jamie, though not his blood, was her legacy, a child she cherished. Grace's warning loomed. Don't make me regret this. Tomorrow he'd face her, the boys, the weight of his mistakes. Could he be the father Noah needed, the protector Jamie deserved? The rain offered no answers, only a rhythm that urged him forward. Elliot returned to his desk, the photo trembling in his hands. Clara's scarf, Noah's trains, Jamie's laughter, they were threads in a tapestry he'd torn apart. Now he had to weave them back, stitch by painful stitch. He whispered her name, a plea into the dark. "Clara, I'm trying." The city watched silent as he steeled himself for Cambridge, for the boys who called him to a life he'd never imagined, a life where love, not pride, might finally win. Sunlight spilled through the curtains of Grace Ellis's Cambridge home, warming the worn floor where Noah and Jamie played, their laughter a fragile melody against the weight of Elliot Grayson's heart. The DNA results, 99.9%, still seared his mind. Noah's paternity, a truth that had unraveled him in his rain-soaked office. Clara's faith, her stories of his blue eyes told to their son, had left him raw, while Jamie's place as her chosen child with another man stirred a complex ache. Now standing at Grace's door with a wooden train set tucked under his arm, Elliot felt the gravity of his promise to Marcus. To be a father, not a tycoon. Grace opened the door, her gray eyes cautious but softened by the sight of the toy. "You came," she said, stepping aside. The living room was alive with the boys' energy. Noah pushing a toy car, Jamie stacking blocks with gleeful abandon. Elliot's throat tightened, their innocence a stark contrast to the guilt he carried. "For them," he said, voice low, holding up the train set. Clara's dream of such a gift for her children once shared in whispers, drove him here, a small offering against a mountain of mistakes. "Boys, look who's here," Grace called, her tone neutral. Noah's head snapped up, his brown eyes brightening. "Mr. Eyes," he chirped, scrambling to his feet. Jamie toddled after, clutching a block, his pale curls bouncing. "Da!" he babbled, grinning. The words so freely given pierced Elliot, a warmth he hadn't earned. He knelt, setting the train set down, its polished wood gleaming. "I brought something," he said, voice unsteady. "Your mommy liked trains. Thought you might too." Noah's face lit up, his small hands reaching for the toy. "Trains!" he exclaimed, dropping to the floor to inspect it. Jamie plopped beside him, clapping as Noah lined up the cars. Elliot watched, marveling at their joy, a flicker of Clara's laughter in their smiles. "Can we make it go?" Noah asked, looking up with such trust that Elliot's breath caught. "Let's try," he said, joining them on the rug, his tailored suit out of place but forgotten. He guided Noah's hands connecting tracks while Jamie pushed a car, giggling. "Choo!" Grace settled into an armchair, her gaze steady but less guarded. "They love anything that moves," she said, a hint of warmth breaking through. Elliot glanced at her, sensing a crack in her armor. "Clara used to talk about trains," he said, voice soft. "Said she'd get one for her kids." The slip stung, a reminder of Noah's truth in Jamie's different bond. Grace nodded, her fingers tracing the armrest. "She sang to them about trains. Noah remembers." Elliot's chest ached, imagining Clara's voice, her lullabies for two boys she'd loved fiercely. "What was she like after?" he asked, the question spilling out. Grace's eyes met his, grief and strength intertwined. "Strong," she said. "Broken at first after you, but she found herself in Chicago. Daniel helped, loved her, loved Noah like his own. Jamie was their joy." Her voice faltered, the crash's shadow lingering. Elliot swallowed, the image of Clara's new life both painful and humbling. Noah tugged his sleeve, pulling him back. "Look, Mr. Eyes, it's a big train." The tracks formed a wobbly circle, Jamie clapping as Noah pushed the cars. Elliot smiled, a rare ease settling in. "It's perfect," he said, ruffling Noah's hair. Jamie crawled closer, offering a block. "Da, play," he said, his tiny hand brushing Elliot's. The gesture, so open, stirred something deep, a longing to be more than a stranger. He stacked the block, Jamie's giggle a spark of light. Grace watched, her expression softening further. "You're trying," she said, voice low, "but it's not enough to show up once." Elliot met her gaze, the challenge clear. "I know," he said, voice firm. "I want to be here, Grace. For Noah. And Jamie." The inclusion of Jamie surprised even him, but it felt right. Clara's love for both boys was a legacy he couldn't ignore. Grace's lips curved, not quite a smile. "Clara would want them happy," she said. "Prove you can do that." He nodded, the weight of her words grounding him. "I brought something else," he said, pulling a small wooden block from his pocket, carved with a C for Clara. "For Jamie," he said, handing it to the toddler, who clutched it, babbling, "Mama." Noah leaned in, curious. "For Mommy?" he asked. Elliot's throat tightened. "Yeah, buddy, for her." Noah hugged him suddenly, small arms fierce, and Jamie piled on, giggling. The embrace, unearned but freely given, cracked something in Elliot's heart, a warmth he'd forgotten. Grace rose, signaling the visit's end. "Come back soon," she said, her tone a cautious invitation. Elliot stood, the train set still, circling in his mind. "I will," he promised, meeting her eyes. Noah waved, clutching a train car. "Bye, Mr. Eyes," Jamie echoed. "Da!" Their voices trailing as Grace closed the door. Elliot stepped into the crisp afternoon, the sun brighter now, though clouds loomed. In his car, the carved block's weight lingered in his pocket, a reminder of Clara's love. Noah was his son, Jamie her chosen child, and both were his responsibility now. Grace's trust, still fragile, was a hurdle, but the boy's laughter was a beacon. He called Marcus, voice steady. "I saw them," he said. "I'm not running. Not anymore." Marcus's approval was a quiet hum. Keep going, man. They're worth it. Elliot drove toward Boston, the city's skyline sharp against the sky. Clara's scarf, Noah's trains, Jamie's blocks, they were pieces of a life he'd nearly lost. Grace's words, "Prove you can do that," were a challenge he'd meet, one visit at a time. The road to redemption was long, but for the first time, he felt its pull, a father's heart beating beneath a tycoon's armor. Noah's hug, Jamie's giggle, they were Clara's gift, and he'd fight to be worthy of them. Spring breathed life into Mount Auburn Cemetery, wildflowers weaving color through the grass where Elliot Grayson stood beside Clara's gravestone. The marble, once stark under winter's grip, now glowed in the morning sun. Its inscription, Clara Marie Ellis, beloved daughter, a quiet promise kept. Months had passed since his first visit with Noah and Jamie. Their laughter in Grace's living room a spark that had warmed his heart. The train set, the carved block, their small hands in his. They'd transformed him, a tycoon learning to be a father. Today, with Noah and Jamie at his side, he came to honor Clara, the woman who'd given him this chance. Noah, clutching a fresh daisy, knelt by the stone, his dark eyes bright. "I love you, Mommy," he whispered, placing the flower gently. Jamie, steadier on his feet now, toddled forward, a smooth pebble in his chubby fist. "Mama," he said, setting it beside the daisy, his curls catching the breeze. Elliot's throat tightened, their simple offerings a testament to Clara's enduring love. He touched the marble, its warmth a contrast to that frozen day when Noah's daddy had shattered his world. "Thank you, Clara," he murmured, "for them." Grace stood beside him, her gray hair softened by sunlight, her face no longer etched with suspicion. "She'd be proud," she said, voice soft but sure. Elliot met her gaze, gratitude swelling. Her trust, hard-won through countless visits, was a gift as precious as the boy's affection. "I hope so," he said, his voice thick. "I'm trying to be the man she believed I could be." Grace's lips curved, a rare smile. "You're getting there," she said, her hand brushing Jamie's head as he leaned against her. The past months had been a quiet revolution. Elliot had moved Noah, Jamie, and Grace to a cozy house in Newton, a short drive from his own, its yard now scattered with toys and laughter. He'd traded late-night deals for bedtime stories, reading to Noah about trains, chuckling as Jamie babbled along. Grace had watched, her wariness fading with each visit, each moment he proved his commitment. The Clara Ellis Foundation, launched with his fortune, now funds scholarships for Chicago's poorest children, a tribute to Clara's resilience. He'd stood at its opening, Noah and Jamie clapping beside him, feeling her spirit in their joy. Noah tugged his sleeve, pulling him back to the present. "Can we tell Mommy about the swing?" he asked, eyes sparkling. Elliot smiled, kneeling beside him. "Go ahead, buddy." Noah leaned close to the stone, voice earnest. "Daddy got us a big swing. Jamie goes high." Jamie clapped, chiming, "Swing!" Elliot's heart swelled. The title Daddy no longer a shock but a mantle he wore with pride. He ruffled Noah's hair, then Jamie's, their warmth grounding him. Grace's voice broke the moment, gentle but firm. "She always knew you'd find them," she said, her eyes on the grave. "Even after everything, Clara believed in you." Elliot's chest ached, remembering her defiance, her torn check, her faith he'd betrayed. "I didn't deserve it," he said, voice low. "But I'm here now because of her." Grace nodded, her silence a bridge between past and present. "The boys need you," she said. "Both of them." Elliot glanced at Jamie, who'd wandered to chase a butterfly, his giggles echoing. Not his son by blood, but Clara's, bound to Noah by her love. He'd embraced Jamie as his own, teaching him to stack blocks, catching him on the swing. Noah's protectiveness, the way he held Jamie's hand, mirrored Clara's heart. "They're brothers," Elliot said, the truth simple but profound. "Clara made them that. I won't break it." Grace's smile widened, a seal of approval he'd fought to earn. They lingered by the grave, the spring air carrying a promise of renewal. Noah traced the stone's letters, asking, "Is Mommy happy?" Elliot knelt, pulling him close. She's happy, Noah. She sees you and Jamie, and she's proud. Jamie toddled back, piling into the hug, his pebble-streaked hands smudging Elliot's shirt. Grace laughed, a sound rare and bright, joining them. The moment, fleeting but perfect, was Clara's gift. A family forged not just by blood, but by choice. Later at the Newton house, the yard buzzed with life. Elliot pushed Noah on the swing, Jamie squealing beside him, while Grace sipped tea on the porch. "Higher, Daddy," Noah called, his laughter a melody. Jamie echoed, "Hi!" his voice a spark. Elliot grinned, his heart lighter than it had been in years. Marcus had called earlier, praising the foundation's impact. But this swing, these boys, was his true legacy. "You're flying, Noah," he said, pushing harder, Jamie clapping in delight. Grace joined them, her presence a quiet anchor. "You've done well," she said, her voice carrying weight. Elliot paused, catching his breath. "I couldn't have without you," he said, meeting her eyes. "You kept them safe for her." Grace's gaze softened, a shared understanding passing between them. "Clara's still here," she said, touching her heart. "In them. In us." As dusk settled, Elliot carried a sleepy Jamie inside, Noah trailing with a toy train. Grace tucked them into bed, their soft snores filling the room. Elliot stood at the door, watching, a vow forming. "I'll keep them safe," he whispered to Clara, to himself. Back at the cemetery, he'd felt her presence, a gentle nudge toward this life. Noah's daisy, Jamie's pebble, the foundation, they were threads of her love, woven into a future he'd fight for. He stepped outside, the spring stars bright above. Clara's scarf, now framed in his study, was a reminder of what he'd lost and found. Noah's laughter, Jamie's trust, Grace's faith. They were his family built on love, not pride. "We'll make you proud, Clara," he said, the words a prayer. The night held him close, a promise of tomorrow, where a father's heart, once cold, now beat for two boys, and the woman who'd never stopped believing. Elliot's journey from regret to redemption, bound by Clara's love for Noah and Jamie, leaves us with hope in the family's power to heal. Did their story touch your heart? Share your thoughts below. What did you predict, and how did it unfold? From wherever you're listening, at whatever hour, thank you for joining this emotional ride. Your support means everything, so don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell for more stories that grip your soul. Tell us where you're from, and let's keep this community growing. Until next time, keep love close and stay tuned.